Hello my friends, my name is Rich and welcome to Greatest Rock and Metal. On Greatest Rock and Metal I talk about what are for me the greatest bands, albums, gigs of all time, based on listening to thousands of albums and going to hundreds of gigs over many years. If you like what you see, please press the red button to subscribe to the channel to see future episodes. It's free, it's easy to do, it won't take you very long. Thank you very much. On today's episode, the featured band is Skid Row. And today we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of this amazing album, Slave to the Grind, 30 years old today. Woo-hoo-hoo! A little bit of my history with Skid Row. The summer of 1989, and I hear this song, Youth Gone Wild. We are the youth gone wild. Brilliant song. Had to learn more about the band. The band was Skid Row. The members of the band were Scotty Hill on guitar, Dave Snake Saibo on guitar, Sebastian Bach vocalist, Rachel Bolan bass guitar, and Robert Fuso on drums. What is considered to be the classic lineup of Skid Row. They formed in 1986, and they were formed by Dave Snake and Rachel Bolan, who then added the other three members of the band. And they recorded their classic debut album down here, Skid Row, and then followed that up in 91 with Slave to the Grind. They were hugely successful. The debut album in 1989, from which Youth Gone Wild is taken, was a massive success, 5 times platinum in America, and spawned many singles, and such as 18 and Life, which was another really big song from that album. Full of hits, great debut album. But then they took a bit of a break after the success of Slave to the Grind, and when they came back in 1995 with Subhuman Race, their third album, things had changed a little bit. This particular album was the heaviest album that they'd done, and they were coming back in the time of the grunge era, and things just weren't the same anymore. And it wasn't long after that, because the album was a bit of a flop, that in 1996 they fired Sebastian Bach, and Bach went solo, and Skid Row continued with various singers now they've had since that period of time, and they haven't really done very much. In that time they've only produced a couple of studio albums and a couple of EPs as well, none of which have had any great success, and they spend most of their time playing on festival bills and club tours. Now, it is hoped that towards the end of this year or early next year, depending on what's going on with COVID, that Skid Row will be releasing a new studio album with a big name producer, and it will be the first with their current singer, a guy by the name of ZP Theat, who used to be the singer in a band called Dragon Force. So we'll see what that brings. Hopefully they do come back with a cracking album. But it's been sad to see over the years. There's been many attempts to get the classic lineup back together, and especially to get back in the band, Sebastian back in the band, but they've just never happened. Rachel and Snake have complete control over this band, and it seems they don't want to do it for the money. Amazing when you think of bands like Guns N' Roses, who've been able to put their differences aside and have some of the key members, Slash and Axl, back together. What other bands have had that you never thought would happen? Kiss in 1996. Kiss put their differences aside and brought back their two original members who'd caused many problems in the past. They soon split up again, but at least they tried it. Black Sabbath, another one that were able to put their differences aside and get together for the moolah. And next year we're going to see, or this year, probably next year, we're going to see the likes of the Black Crowes and My Chemical Romance back together as well. So all of these bands who put their differences aside to get back together again for the cash, and let's be honest, it is for the cash, whatever else they say. Skid Row haven't done that, despite apparently some amazing offers to do so. So let's look at more positive things and this brilliant album. This is a record day edition of the album on vinyl that was released last year. Double album, beautifully presented, nice glossy finish there. Gatefold, inside you open it up, and there you've got that fantastic artwork, and then the song titles at the back there. Inside we have the lyric sheet and credits, and as I say, a double album. It's been pressed on red vinyl. I'll show you I'll show you one of them. Put that down there a minute. Yeah, there we go, look at that. Beautiful. Okay, so this sounds massive as well. This is a very heavy album, and the vinyl version really does do it justice. So, what? I'm always dropping things. God damn it. It's okay, no damage done. So, what are my favourite four from this album? Well, without any shadow of a doubt, they come early on, the majority of them. The first opening track, Monkey Business. It starts up very, very slowly, an acoustic intro, almost whispered vocals from Sebastian Bach, and then it goes into this massive riff and massive, amazing scream, and we're off and running into what is a very heavy album. This, the debut album, which had been full of hits, was ideal for the radio. It was all sing-along, hard rock, stroke metal with all the pop killer choruses on there. This was a very different album, a lot heavier album, and although it was also successful, not as successful as the debut album. This, I think, went 2 times platinum in the States, because when you hear Monkey Business, which was also the lead-off single, straight away people are going to be like, wow, this is pretty heavy for Skid Row, and it really was. But none more heavier than what they followed it up with. The second track on here, and title track, Slave to the Grind. A real thrasher. Now, at this time, thrash metal was starting to be a really big thing. Metallica were soon to release their Black album, and their previous album, And Justice for All, had been a real success, and you've had successful albums from Slayer and Anthrax and Megadeth, and thrash was a real big thing, and certainly Skid Row had started to embrace elements of that too. Slave to the Grind, a classic example. I used to go mental in the rock clubs whenever this was played. I used to have long hair, and I'd be windmilling it about to this song. Brilliant, brilliant, heavy track. And I love the lyrics to it as well, about being a slave to the grind. The next track that I will choose, Get the Fuck Out! Get the Fuck Out. Brilliant song again. This is the song to all the groupie hangers-on that bands will sometimes get. It's like, I've got what I need from you, now get the fuck out of my room, I've got another gig to go to. Great song, brilliant live. This always used to go across brilliant live, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then another aggressive track. I really love the aggressive tracks on this one. This is a track towards the end of the album, Riot Act. And the lyrics on this song are just brilliant. I love the line, "You say it's raining, but you're pissing down my back." Awesome. Great lyrics. What's happened to lyrics like that, eh? We don't get those kind of lyrics in songs anymore. That's the one thing, those of you who lived through 80s metal, the non-PC world of metal and rock, it was awesome. We had hot chicks in the videos, we had disgusting lyrics and hilarious piss-taking lyrics as well, and I do miss those. We don't get as much of them nowadays. Okay, Steel Panther do their part, but it's kind of a joke with them, and it's not quite the same, where even though it was a fun joke here, they were still taking it serious metal. Okay, so fantastic album. There's not so many of the ballady type tracks, and in fact the ballady type tracks that are on here have a lot more heaviness and metal to them. This was a much darker and heavier album than the debut, and really did lose them a lot of the casual fans that they picked up with the debut album. But for me, I loved the direction, and the follow-up again, Subhuman Race, where I said it got even heavier. I love that album too, even though no one else seemed to. So there you have it. 30 years since this great album was released, and stick it on and enjoy it today. Next, I'm going to talk about seeing Skid Row live on the tour for this album. But before we do that, let's take a look at Rock T-shirts by the Sea. So, the summer of 1991 in the UK, it was a bank holiday weekend, a bank holiday weekend, like an annual holiday thing that we have in the UK. And I'm at Wembley Stadium to see Guns N' Roses with support bands Skid Row and 9 Inch Nails. And of course, I'm here to talk about Skid Row. I will discuss this gig another time. This was an absolute legendary gig by Guns N' Roses, but it's Skid Row that I'm going to talk about today. I have been lucky enough to see this classic lineup of Skid Row many times live. They were one of my favourite live bands in the late 80s, early 90s, and whenever I got a chance to go and see them, I would do so. I even travelled over to France for one gig because I just loved seeing this band live. They are absolutely killer. The energy on stage with Skid Row by all of the band members is unbelievable. Sebastian Bach is a superb frontman, brilliant at getting the crowd going and interaction, and his vocals in those days were just absolutely stunning. I loved Skid Row live, and this gig was one of their greatest gigs without any shadow of a doubt. They will tell you that themselves, even though it was only a support band gig. They They had 10 songs they played that day. They played 5 from each album, the best tracks from each of their albums, and it really was a killer show. I'll never forget, it was a boiling hot day. You had the girls with the shirts up all over the crowd. Wembley Stadium, it's a fantastic venue for a stadium gig, as are many football stadiums, because they've got that way in which they can echo the sound around of the crowd, and the atmosphere was just unbelievable. Skid Row played perfectly that day, and one of the big moments that came was, I mentioned the song Get the Fuck Out before. Well, before they played this song, they read out a letter that they'd allegedly received from the local council, saying that the bands were not allowed to use bad language on stage, and if they were, they'd be shut down and wouldn't be allowed to play the rest of the gig. Of course, that never happened. You've got a stadium full of, what, 80,000 people, like they're going to kick them out because someone says the word fuck? Bach makes this brilliant speech before the gig. You can find it on YouTube. It was even put on one of their B-sides of a single. Legendary song that day from a brilliant performance of the band. One that will live in my memory forever. So, that's what I've got to say about Skid Row Live. It would be great one more time if they could just put their differences aside to do one more tour with Bach. Bach has still got it as a frontman. Vocally, he's lost it a little bit. Not as bad as some singers. He can still give it the good old scream, but never like he would do in the younger days. But energy-wise, these guys have still got it, and if they could just find a way to put their differences aside, us fans would really appreciate it. Who knows? Guns N' Roses said not in this lifetime, but they did it. Slash and Axl. Who knows? Maybe Bach, Bolan and Snake can set aside their differences too. Regardless, I'm looking forward to hearing the new Skid Row album. So, now, normally I would pick my favourite 4 albums from a band, but for a band that has had a career that is over 30 years long, they've got a piss poor discography. And like I said earlier, they didn't produce very much, so I can't pick my favourite 4. One thing I would recommend is is of course these 2 brilliant albums here. I've said Subhuman Race is great. They also did a covers EP too, and it's got some great covers on there. They do Judas Priest Delivering the Goods, which sounds superb, absolutely superb. So I'd check out that covers EP. It's very good. B-sides Ourselves. There you have it. Thank you very much for watching. Please press the red button to subscribe to the channel. There will be future Skid Row episodes. I'll talk about the debut album and the first time I saw them live. But also there'll be future episodes of Greatest Rock and Metal. So please press that red button and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, as always, we rock!